Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Today on Collection Lessons, I'm going to be talking about owning versus renting versus leasing versus financing. It's part of my collection lesson series, and anything to say on this channel is not anything advice. And let's get into it. So I'm starting new year with this topic. I'm also starting on Windows 11, so I might sound a little different. I'm still getting used to Windows 11. Windows 11 Paint looks like this, which is like horrible. And I don't know who the heck designed it so you can't remove the ribbon. So I had to, like, for an hour, figure out how to get Windows 10 Paint back onto Windows 11. So, back onto Windows 10 Paint in Windows 11 now. I'm getting the hang of it. Anyway, side topic. I was just frustrated with that because that was an annoying hour trying to figure that out. So let's get into it. Owning, financing, leasing, and renting. They're very hot topics, and they're often grouped in similar fashions. If I were to group these, owning and financing is very similar, and leasing and renting is also very similar. And usually there's like a fine line between the two, and people don't really understand the difference of them. People think, well, if you buy a car on a 5-year loan, it's your car. It's not your car. It's only you own the responsibility, the liability, and the risk of the car. You also own the debt of the car, right? You own the contract between you and the bank for the car. The car is owned by the bank. Leasing and renting are similar. Leasing is usually long-term type of renting, and renting is just pure renting. It's usually short-term. And there's benefits to all four of these, right? Not one is better than the other. I think, if you own something, you're actually invested in it, which means like, it's kind of like if you own let's go with $100,000 vehicle, for a Toyota, let's say, because I like Toyotas. You invested $100,000 in Toyota. I hope you know that, right? If you buy a $100,000 vehicle on financing, you're gonna owe more than you would if you bought it outright, right? You might say, well, there's 0% financing, whatever. That's irrelevant because they're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart, right? It's included in the price. You could say like, well, this car, if I paid cash for it or if I paid whatever, basically they're gonna compensate each other. They're gonna if it's 0% APR, they raise the price, pretty much guaranteed, right? And then leasing and renting, people think that's just burning money, throwing money away, but it's not investing in that thing, right? If I rent a $100,000 car for a week and I pay $500 for the week, I'm not, you could say I'm throwing away $500, but I'm not invested $100,000 into it, right? And if you lease, you usually, in a vehicle situation, you pay the depreciation. That's usually your rate. So like, if you lease it for, I don't know, let's say $5,000 a year, right? That $100,000 vehicle, you're not depreciating it anymore, right? So let's just kind of look at these examples, kind of get into it. I'm going to use a car example because I really like cars, and I'm not going to get into like contracts and that type of thing. But basically, we're just going to define these, right? When you own something, you own it 100%. You are 100% liable for all of the risk, all of the issues, everything to do with it, right? Let's use that $100,000 example because this could be applied to like houses and such too, or even like simple things that are $1,000 or whatever. So let's just use this $100,000 example, 100K example. So when you own, let's say, a vehicle or an object that's $100,000, you 100% own it. That means you are 100K invested in it, right? Like I said, if it's a Toyota, you invest 100K in a Toyota, into the company, right? And where their money goes after that 100K that you paid for it, whatever. Financing, you own 100% of risk, liability, appreciation. You own that. And then after all that, you own the debt. Right? There's a price to pay after that. You own the debt. So you own everything, including the contract for the debt. And it's like a contract as in like, over the next 5 to 8 years, you pay this amount at this percent, blah, 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 blah. You own the debt. You own the risk, as well as the, liability depreciation. If the car breaks down, who's paying for that? You are, right? The bank's not gonna be like, well, yeah, we're gonna we're going to fix the car for you because you still owe the debt. No, you fix the car and you owe the debt, right? And you still have 100K invested in it, whatever it is, plus interest. You own all of that, right? Okay, so let's just go to leasing, okay? And we'll get more into this. You go to leasing, how much do you own? Usually less than 50%. And people will be like, well, you don't own any of it. Well, you own it for the contract or the duration of whatever the lease is. Usually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however many years. Let's go with a car example. Like you own the contract, the lease agreement, right? And then in that lease agreement, you got to, adhere to certain rules and how many kilometers you could drive and whichever. They're reasonable. But you don't own it, right? There's still there's warranty. There's certain things. If something goes wrong, you can also get out of it if you need to. You just basically go hand the keys back in. If things go on it, depending on what it is, sometimes the dealership, takes some hits for that. Sometimes you do. It depends on what it is, right? You never really know. It's still a debt because you're contracted for so many years, kind of like when you're so many years contracted in a phone agreement, you bail out of it and you have to pay $20 a month or something like that. It's still a debt, but how much are you invested in it? Well, if the lease agreement, let's say, is for I don't know, we'll go with 5 years, and you pay $5,000, you're only 25K invested in it. What does that mean? That means you got 75K elsewhere. That, the people above you, these ones, don't have. Because they're 100K invested in it. Right? If you lease a vehicle for 25K for 5 years, for those 5 years, you can have 75K make money somewhere else. You can have it wherever else. It doesn't matter, right? So that's what kind of leasing is kind of like. And then renting is basically you own less than 5%, I'll say. You generally don't own a lot of things. There's a lot of renting liability stuff. Sure, if I burn down this place, on purpose, then it's going to be a spicy bill for me. But generally, I don't own anything, right? If the hot water heater goes, I don't care. I'm not paying for it. It's not me. I don't own the liability. I don't own the depreciation or appreciation of this house or this car, or you own nothing. And so when you're invested in it, you're not really invested at all. 0K is invested. And it's like, well, but you're paying a price. But yeah, it's like I could be paying the depreciation of the house. I could be paying whatever. There's always going to be a cost to it, but I'm not actually invested in it. I'm not invested in real estate when I rent. I'm not invested in Toyota when I rent. I'm more so invested in whoever it is, right? If it's like Avis or Budget or whoever renting me the car, or I'm invested in my landlord. I believe, he's a good landlord. I'm invested in him. I'm not invested in his asset that I'm renting. What does that mean? That means I have 100K somewhere else. Elsewhere. Yes, that's right. So it's more about how much risk you own and how much liability and how much depreciation, how much you're invested in the company or whatever it is. All of these can be the exact same number. For, let's say, financing, leasing, and renting, they can be the same number. And it's like, well, you don't get anything at the end of renting or leasing. It's like, you don't need to. It served its purpose. You think when you buy the 100K vehicle on financing, that it's still 100K? No, it's probably half that, which means you lost 50K. Whereas this person at least lost 25K in the same 5 years. And this person at least also has 75K elsewhere, right? I have 100K elsewhere because I'm renting. Because I didn't buy this house that I'm living in, right? I have 100K in the last 2 years that has been to somewhere much better than this house is. And that's not a bad thing. And owning versus renting versus leasing, you just need to get out of the mindset of I need to own everything. And when it's in my hand, it's owning it, right? When you finance something, it's not actually owning it. And it's just interesting if you think of it like this, right? And remember the whole paying with votes with your dollars. Right? If I spend 100K at Best Buy, I'm keeping Best Buy in business. If I spend 100K on Amazon, I'm keeping whoever posted the stuff on Amazon, plus a little bit goes to Amazon, in business. They're not bad things. It's where are you putting your money? If you're 500K house, right? If you're financing your 500K house and you've got a mortgage, right? You're 500K invested in it. You own the risk and liability, depreciation, appreciation. You own also the debt. You're 500K invested in real estate. If I rent a 500K house, it doesn't matter what my payments are. I'm 0K invested in it. I could have 500K in the stock market, making money, and it doesn't matter, right? So I wanted to share that owning versus renting versus leasing versus financing. These generally get looped together: owning, financing, leasing, and renting. You don't own it; you own it here. Depends what you own, right? Depends how much you have invested in it. And you always got to think of that. It's like, would I rather have 500K of mortgages, or would I rather live somewhere and have 500K in a stock market, let's say, or in a market where it grows much more than the houses are, plus you don't have the depreciation, the liability of hot water heater going, you don't have, people ripping down walls or whatever, like in a house thing. You'd rather want to be invested in like a real estate trust or something like that, in my opinion. I don't want mortgages. I don't want debt. You can do these debt free. You can do owning debt free. You can't do financing debt free. So anyway, that's what I want to share this video. Hope it makes sense. Hope you guys are doing well. Here's off to a great 2022. Thanks, and talk soon.